Hey everybody, this is Jim at SP500chart.com. I'm going to do a little video here on the technical analysis of ARNA Pharmaceuticals. And this is from my friends over on the Yahoo message board. And anyone else who comes across this read, you can leave right now because you're not going to like what I have to say regardless. So just, whatever. But before I get into it, I just need to remind you that the website and the video are for educational purposes only. Nothing stated at the site or in the video is intended to be used as investment advice. I can draw lines on charts, but you have to draw your own conclusions from your own research and make investment decisions that are suitable for your personal financial situation. I am not a licensed financial professional. I'm just a guy that draws lines on charts. So let's look. And the first thing that goes without saying is that nothing works 100% of the time. So even though this may look like a really pretty picture, it could be nothing more than just a really pretty picture. It may not really it may not bear fruit, if that's a way I can put it. But here's what's really interesting about ARNA is that it had been in a long-term downtrend going back to the middle of the year of 2000, where I find its all-time high just in the high $40 range, was it? Roughly, yeah, 46, 47 bucks. And then it just kind of traded down. Interesting to note that we have 1, 2, 3 points that define this upper line. And we've got 1, 2, 3 points that define this lower line. And the real interesting thing is these lines are almost parallel. So I'm going to let those stand as being indicative of the long-term trend. And without boring you with all the details, you can see that since FDA approval, ARNA has been, for the most part, over this long-term trend line. You could see there were a couple of days where it traded underneath this line, but by a very small margin. Now, I'd done a video on ARNA some months back where I kind of drew some trend lines on what had been taking place since that 13 plus high on FDA approval. And I've made some alterations to this. Now, critics, go ahead, say, well, you make alterations because your first lines were just, quote, dead wrong. Whatever. The fact is that there are times when you think you see one thing developing, and when you look at it in retrospect, you see, no, what I saw was a partial picture that looked good for a while, but now there's more information, and you have to look at it again and say, here's what it looks like now, and here are now what are the risks, what is the upside, what is the downside. So yeah, I have changed my outlook on the last year of trading in ARNA, and one of the reasons I've changed it is, well, I take it back. I never changed my outlook on what it means to be over this top resistance line. That's been the same. But one of the reasons that I've changed the overall pattern for the past year, which is what we're looking at right here, is the fact that it looks like we came down to this line for a third test, and so far, so good. So let's take a look at just what's taken place over the past year. Okay, we're looking at a daily chart now. I've got a resistance line up here that is a dark green line. And by the way, I did make a call back in June where I thought, and I think I would make the call 10 times out of 10, where I was thinking we were going to get to 965. I thought we were going to come up and test this top line. Everything looked primed for it, but was not to be. Could not get above the mid 920s. 965 failed to get tagged. So there. missed that by what, 38 cents. So, but I'm still long in this, and I've been buying on the dips, and I did not foresee a dip into the sixes. I thought that this line right here was our support line, and that this support line would continue to serve as support until we broke out over this top green line and started to head up into the low teens. But this line did break. The question now is this line, having broken, a severe enough event to overcome the long-term trend lines that seem to be at play in the mid-960s? And you can see there's that red line that I showed you from the long-term resistance line that got broken out in June of 2012. You see a couple times it dipped down below it, but it always rallied pretty good off of that. The other interesting thing is that, and this is kind of an esoteric reason, but a lot of times when you have consolidation patterns that have a lot of wiggling around, if you will, oftentimes you can it'll help you spot what the pattern is doing if you find a line that is almost exactly midway in the pattern that seems to be exerting some technical influence. And what I mean by that is this: there's often a line that bisects the pattern 50% from the bottom line, 50% from the top line, and if you look at it and you snap that line, and a lot of things tend to line up with it, and that line tends to look like it's technically significant, a lot of times that tells you this is the pattern that you're looking for, and it's not the previous one. So look, this was the bottom line of what I thought was our consolidation pattern right here. And you can see, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to make that dark green so you can take a look at it in that context. There we go. But you can see the midline does not really line up with that, because here's our top line, here's our bottom line, and that midline is not in the middle. So for now, let's just get rid of that. And let's look at the possibility that maybe this line follows pretty closely this here, pretty closely this bottom here, and pretty closely what the lows of the trading we saw throughout the month of July. There are two reasons that this may be right. The first is when we snap our little midline, you can see all kinds of little moves in and around where this line seems to be exerting some technically significant action in almost like a backbone running down through the middle of this larger pattern. And second of all, again I mentioned, we come down to this long-term broken resistance line that, even though it did not give perfect support in August and November of 2012, it looks to have picked it up pretty good here. The other reason is, if we back out just for a bit, there was a resistance line up here that has 1, 2, 3 touches on it. I snapped this down to a parallel line down here, and I line it up with this point back here. And what's interesting to note is all of the trading that is to the south of this line took place when the market was considering the FDA trials of lorcaserin as a failure. So all of this was failure. Belviq doesn't exist. And then, once, quote, Belviq exists again, it jumps right back up over this line and then heads up on FDA approval to this resistance line and then starts to sell back. And interestingly, coincidence or what, but this long-term resistance line and this parallel tops line right here have their nexus in the mid-sixes. Also, coincidence or not, if we take even our lows from late 2011 and 2012 and shoot shoot a trend line up into 2013, the summer of 2013, that also has its nexus. And there's a little wiggle room in where you draw these, because this isn't, there's no way to be extremely exact with this when you have your starting points that are so close together. But you get the point. It just looks like a lot of coincidental things are lining up here in the upper to mid sixes. And I did not want to sell at this point. As a matter of fact, I added down here based upon what I think may be going on still with the overall chart and with the year-long chart. And let me show you one more thing. I think I got to go to an hourly chart. Yeah. If we look at the trading since June, here we go. We got up to 925. Didn't get that 965 that I thought would happen. There's where that 965 was. Didn't happen. So that means I'm 100% wrong. That's fine. That's for you, Red. If we look at the peaks that have occurred since then, and we snap this line down here, we see that ARNA is now above what one should expect this to be a resistance line. But it got above it. And interesting to note that it also got above it right at about the nexus of where we would have expected some resistance at about 725. So I think a number of these things are making this look like this could be a double bottom. If this is kind of a double bottom or triple bottom, because we had a touch back here too, then the target should be about 780. And that should bring ARNA back to that midline, if you will, in its chart that I showed you between the between this line and this line right here. So just to make a long story short, it looks to me like ARNA is still in the consolidation process, and I think the jury is still out on whether or not this breaks to the downside or breaks to the upside. But having taken out 750 does not bother me now as much as it did initially. And I would have loved to have seen a good bounce there, but I've just got reason to believe that it looks like this may be a little double bottom, kind of a little shakeout, and we will soon know, because we've got a number of trend lines that seem to be working pretty well. And one that really kind of intrigues me is this one right here that we just pointed out. Finally, I see a resistance up in this light green line, which is currently in the low 8s. So if we were to get over this midline, then I would expect some resistance here. And then if we get up to 9, that would be fantastic. And if we take 9 out, then that looks to be the day at which ARNA breaks free from this pattern to the upside. Now, one more thing worth noting. Because this lower line is slightly downsloping and this upper line is definitely downsloping, if this is the correct line, then this turns into what a chart person would describe as a descending wedge. And descending wedges usually resolve to the upside. So with all of this little nexus taking place here at 650, I just think this is I couldn't make myself sell, and I couldn't keep myself from adding to my position. So that's it. I just wanted to share that. As always, no guarantees, but certainly food for thought. And if you don't like this kind of stuff, keep your thoughts to yourselves in the channel. Whatever. I don't care. But anyway, just thought I'd share this. Take care.